It's just I'll share my screen though, and we can look at the Google page. It's just
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of SEO Fight Club. I am currently trying to get the YouTube chat to appear. So let's see. Still no YouTube chat yet. It's back to doing the thing where I have to refresh the page for chat to show up. There it is. Hello, and reminding everyone in chat to ask questions. Because just remember, uh, if you don't ask questions, it's a short show and you don't get all the good info. So, we don't restrict what questions you can ask. So if you want to ask the uh, typically not permitted questions that SEO people will never answer, go ahead and ask them. We'll answer. We'll tell you our deepest, darkest secrets, but the name of the game is you have to be specific in the question. Can't be so generalized. You have to have an actual question. So that's the trick. We're open books, but you got to ask specific questions. What do you think of that rule, Lee?
I like the rule. I like the rule. The specificity helps. The general, my site got hit in an update. What should I do? It's very hard to, craft a response to that.
Yeah, but I mean, even that is at least specific enough that we can talk about it. It's not just like, tell me your best secret. That's an example of too broad. But if you have a question like, how would you adapt to situation X? Totally fine.
So I like the rule of you can ask any question you want. I'd like to add a small provision in there that I reserve the right to artfully dodge the question if I give up so I
Yeah,
don't have to give up too many secrets.
Yeah.
yeah, of course. I'm
No.
not gonna offer up all your best stuff or out your knowledge. But people know me, and so at least one on the panel is gonna probably be an open book and say too much, and then you guys can opt in as needed.
So I'll drop the first, what I consider a knowledge bomb of the session is, so if you have, let's say for example, I just think Ted is, he's the SEO OG, he's the grandmaster. I want to know everything that Ted knows. One secret is to find every interview Ted's ever given online and listen to them, because he won't give all his secrets away in one interview, but he'll often give one part in one interview, another part in another interview, and another part in another interview, and you can usually piece together what some things people are working on. So
Yeah,
I've done that for a few folks.
Yep.
which means it's impossible to know it all because nobody can listen to that much TED. It's protected by misery. It's the most powerful encryption there is. Um, all right, so a couple things to get to. So Magic PR Black Friday is over. And so that's really sad if you haven't gotten the best pricing of the year over at Magic PR. But there's a special deal just for SEO Fight Club viewers. So if you want to save 10% on any last minute press releases you decide you need, just use the coupon code SEO Fight Club. And that's just for tracking purposes. There's no affiliate money changing hands here because we are a service exchange. He is sponsoring our research by giving us access to press releases, and we are conducting research and press releases to give you guys, our viewers, information. So, no exchange of money in the sponsorship, but that doesn't mean you can't save a little money because he's generously offering another discount for our viewers. So if you need referring domains, and from what I tend to see, about 80% of you out there need referring domains.
Mm-hmm.
This is a great way to do it. Even Google does press releases. Keep them honest, keep them on topic for the page you're trying to rank. Be sure to link them to the page you're trying to rank. And oftentimes, one is overkill. So it's not a thing where you get 12. All right. Please don't do that. I'm sure Madge would love it if you did 12, but honestly, do some data-driven SEO, find out what you actually need in terms of referring domains and what your competition for the keyword is actually doing. And I think, more often than not, about 80% of the time, one press release, one honest press release is all you need. So, get some data, do the measurements, get a plan, get the safest plan. That's my recommendation. What do you think, Lee?
I like it. I think the thing is, we want to see how many people will use the service. It's sort of a tracking code, as Ted said, more than anything else. And yeah, most of the time when I see people's sites, the pages they're trying to rank, they oftentimes have 0 or less than 10 links coming to them. So people tend to try to keep optimizing the on page, which is an important, critical piece to it. But at some point, you're going to have to get some links, and this is a great way to do it.
So, Madge, uh, just making sure I understood the message right. Did I get the details of this offer correct?
Yeah, hi Ted. Yes, you did. You've got it absolutely on point. The discount is available for all packages that we offer. And yes, from a referring domain count, bronze, silver, and gold could do the trick for you, whichever you prefer. And depending on the client's budget that they have, whether they do one, whether they do several. But you need to know a starting point, and you need to have that conversation with your client of where you want to start.
Yeah, and any like guesstimates I make on the number of referring domains a press release can deliver, it can vary. Like, there's no guarantee on that because if you have a very controversial topic, fewer places will run with the story. Like, if you tried to do a press release in the adult space, like almost nobody would pick it up. And so, topics change things and your quality of your writing changes things. And so just keep in mind that, results can vary. But what we usually see with press releases is, when you make a genuine, honest effort trying to do well, what you often will get is something between no result to really good impact. That's what we generally see most of the time. And on the no result side, it's either the targeting in the press release was off or the anchors were off. So you trying to rank for electrician and you did a press release about cats, like that'll spoil the value. Another way that it uh, can typically run off the rails and get no result is you didn't do your homework. You didn't get the data. You didn't find out that, oh, I needed 1,400 referring domains for this keyword, so one isn't enough. So you got to measure to get an idea of how short you are. And then ultimately, not all links are equal. So we operate on a premise of average internet backlinks, and we try to assume that everybody is dealing with average internet backlinks. But it's not always the case. Sometimes people have a whopper of a backlink, and that's never reflected in the numbers. And so, if there's an outlier, that's one dimension of difference. Uh, so yeah, get some data. It's always better to make an informed choice and, kind of do it right and go slow and try to learn. What do you think, Charles? You're an enterprise SEO, so you probably don't value press releases the way the rest of us do.
Well, we know press releases are very, very valuable. We have a bit of a cheat code often, and I remember in multiple places we could send out a press release and where the rest you have to scrap and fight and claw to get the really good links. We do the press release and we just kind of get often get the good links automatically. So here's a little tip for folks if you're working in enterprise, or just actually not even if you're working in enterprise. If you have a bank of press releases that have gone out already, my recommendation is you keep those on your site as well. And now you have a great place to do some internal linking from, and that's one of the things we used to do a lot of. We would want to boost up a specific page. We would go into our corporate communications section of the website, go through all the old press releases, find pages that Google already considered relevant for that specific keyword. 3 to 7 anchor text links later, we've got ourselves a really, really strong internal link profile. So we use press releases in a very, very different manner, where they just kind of happened, and then they were a tool for us to build better, more precise internal linking.
Yeah, that's really smart. And it's white hat too. You'll find that a lot of VC funded startup companies, they will almost always have a press page where they're doing exactly that. And all the big major corporations, the enterprises, if you will, they tend to have a press room. So they link to all of their stories and press releases from one spot. And yeah, that's a good place to get organized with that. I like it a lot.
And to quote you, Ted, if they can do it, why can't I? And that's a great example. If there are large organizations doing this, guess what? Lee's Plumber should do. Lee's Plumber should do the same thing. Now, obviously, their press center is going to look different. It's not going to be huge, but it will. It's the same principle. It's the same. It's the same tactic.
Yep.
Well, over time, if a local business is doing, a couple of press releases a month, once you get, 6 to 12 months into the year, you have assets that you can reuse when you launch new pages, just to give it that temporary boost, which is, pretty cool.
Absolutely. One last reminder, SEO spring training's coming up. So if you need a tax write-off and want to get up to date on your SEO tactically and strategically, SEO spring training is one of my favorite conferences. So be sure to check it out. It's a great networking event. So you're gonna meet SEO presenters. You're going to meet the attendees. The attendees at this conference are every bit as good as the presenters. So it's pretty incredible, and it has the phenomenon. The phenomenon is the best secrets are often shared at the bar at certain conferences because they don't want the best information to go public. So you got to go and network with people and hang out with them after the presentations. And that's one of the best kept secrets in SEO is knowing how to network at these events. And if you do this right, you can have people sending you their overflow leads. So you can meet people and say, hey, man, if you ever have too many people coming in the door, throw some my way. You could do that. You could just talk to people and arrange that. That's
Mm-hmm.
where like this type of thing happens because we're all on our computers just plugging away at, client X. But you actually have to talk to people and hear about what they're doing and what they might be doing that might be better than what you're doing. So you can evolve your SEO game. So you can grow your business, get better results, have a bigger roster, free up vacation time. I know Lisa likes to talk about freeing up your time for vacations and, you know, but I don't think Lisa's going to be there this year, is she?
We've got our own conference.
Yeah, she's not going to be at spring training this year. She had another event, another family event during that time period.
So you won't get the intel on how to maximize your vacations with SEO. But there's a lot of great lectures there. I've spoken there. Everyone you know of who's like a top SEO has been there. Either speaking or attended. It's an amazing event.
Ted,
So
if
check
you
it
don't,
out.
I was just gonna say, Ted, if you don't mind me jumping in for a quick second, as a little tip for folks, when you go to these conferences, don't be afraid to talk to people. Everyone likes to talk. You'll find, like, I don't know about everybody else. I'm not super like forward. So, you may not see me chatting with people, but you can come up and talk to me if you see me. Say, hey, Charles, nice to meet you. I would also recommend that if you're looking for the nuggets, you don't, I don't approach Lee and say, okay, Lee, start telling me more. Like I realize people don't actually say that specifically, but that's
I
often
do.
what we're doing.
Yeah, yes, they
Okay,
do.
so you have to build rapport to do that. So that you approach, and this is a tactic I've used. And I've approached folks and say, hey, I've seen this. Hey, Lee, you mentioned this in your presentation. This is what I saw. And that really gets the conversation going, because now you're not just approaching somebody asking for more. You're giving and receiving. So it's a relationship. You're building a relationship. And I think that's vital.
Yeah. There's a couple easy questions you can use when you're networking with SEOs. The easiest one is, "Hey, I'm really interested. What's working for you right now?" You know, that's a really easy icebreaker, and everybody loves that topic. Um, Another good one at a conference is, "Hey, have you picked up any good nuggets yet? What did you like so far?" Those types of things are easy icebreakers, get people talking. And the classics also work. "Hey, what do you do? Tell me about your business." "Oh, really? How does that work?" you know, there you go. You're off to the races, getting awesome intel. And so, it's amazing. The only thing I'd want you to consider is that if you can't afford airfare and a hotel and to take 5 days off work, it's not for everyone. So, if you need a tax write-off and you'd really like to modernize, then it's a great idea. But there are situations where it's not a great idea. And so, keep that in mind. It's optional. It's not mandatory. You can still be a good SEO and not attend a conference. Like, that's true too. So don't worry about it. It's if you want to invest in yourself and get the extra business expense before tax season. All right. With that, let me stop sharing. And Carolyn, I believe you had something to announce too, right?
Yeah, yeah. The main thing is, basically taking crawl or no crawl to Substack. And in the course of doing it, kind of around the same time, worked with somebody and we developed a way to stick a server log in to a little box and get a spreadsheet back. So, it's kind of like, I guess I should have done this sooner, but it's been kind of fun. And I just wanted to let some people know if they were curious about it. I'm actually offering, if you sign up and get a free account, that I'll do a log for you, so you can kind of taste the thrill.
All right. So everyone in the audience who should pay attention to this offer, if you have an online retail store with a shopping cart and category pages and products, you probably want to take Carolyn up on this offer, especially if you haven't been diving into your web server log files. Because ever since Google retired the URL parameter tool, online retailers specifically have been having a hard time with Google. And the main reason is your defenses that were in that tool that Google retired are now gone. And now Googlebot is getting into infinite crawls with your faceted navigation. It's interacting with your shopping cart. It's adding and removing products to the cart. It's resorting your socks category by price. It's resorting it by price descending. It's resorting it by size. It's resorting it by average rating. And then they're saying, oops, all out of crawl budget. Didn't get to any of your other categories. Better luck next month. And that is what's happening with a lot of online retailers. Now, when you give this log file snippet to Carolyn, and you don't have to, you could do the analysis by hand yourself. It just takes time and effort. But if you want Carolyn's help with it, she's going to reduce the log file down to what Googlebot is getting into on your website. And if Googlebot is adding to cart, you'll see that. If Googlebot is resorting the categories, you'll see that. And so seeing what Googlebot is doing is diagnostic to a lot of technical SEO problems. And so she's offering to give you help in that area. There is a limit on it. So the thing she kind of glossed over was you get a spreadsheet back. And so spreadsheets can only be so big. So your log file can only be so big. If you go over the limit, she'll probably just truncate the file to the usable amount. So just note that it has to be a reasonable amount for what this tool does. But for most small to mid-size retailers, this should be fine. We're talking millions of records. But if you're an enterprise, don't send a 42 gig log file. Can't do it, not built to do it. Scale ruins everything. You know the drill.
Oops.
The way you were
Carolyn,
describing,
delete my email.
okay. The way you were describing it, Ted, it's like, I know I shouldn't get so excited when people are having such problems, but that was just like gold.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, these log files, they're immensely valuable. And so when I start doing a technical analysis of an e-com website that's gone sideways with Google, I mean, I always start with the log files. It's step one, and nobody does it. Nobody talks about it, but you are literally seeing the footprints of where Googlebot was on the site and what they did. And so if they're adding to cart, you're going to see the add to cart URL in the log file. If they're resorting, you're going to see them interacting with that faceted navigation.
I
And
had somebody who said they were hit by the helpful content update and they lost a page, and even having a server log, like looking at the day it dropped out and backing up like 48 hours. I saw exactly what was going on and was able to let them know what the real problem was. It wasn't helpful content.
yeah. So the SEO tidbit here is, hey, remember weblogs? Go check those out. And if you need assistance, well, we have somebody here who's offering to do it for free. So
For now.
Limited offer. It's kind of a beta testing thing. She has new technology. She wants to make sure it's dialed in. She's asking for volunteers who are curious on what's going on with their own websites. And it doesn't have to be e-commerce. It's just that e-commerce is got a high likelihood of these kinds of problems. So definitely, if you are ecom, you probably want to jump on this offer, or at least take the material of it seriously and investigate yourself.
Yeah, the ability to look at the logs was cool because 2 weeks ago I was having a little, what I thought was a little indexation problem with one of my sites, and I wanted to look at the logs to see how Google was crawling, the new content. And I find that there was very limited number of Googlebot entries that kept coming, homepage, robots, privacy, homepage, robots, privacy. It's like, it's not going anywhere else. What the hell's going on? And I find out that I have a broken sitemap. And when I fix the broken sitemap, Googlebot over the next 24 hours crawled hundreds of pages and re-indexed some that used to be indexed and went away, and now they re-indexed them again. So, just the little technical issue was there because it wasn't crawling any of the other pages because the sitemap was broken.
And Carolyn, while we have you online, Paul is asking, how has indexing been over the last 3 weeks for you and your testing?
Well, it's not, if you're having trouble with it, if you're having issues with it, I can see why that would be so. And part of it too, like I'm also trying to reserve the secrets for the guys who are paying to support the research on that. So
fair,
I would invite them, if they have that type of question and they're serious, it's crawlornocrawl.substack.com. And
for people to understand what Carolyn has been doing for over a year now,
2 years.
over 2 years now,
Yeah.
correction, is she has been creating test pages to get them indexed into Google on multiple times a week, at times nearly daily, but multiple times a week. And she has been doing that and tracking the results, the follow-up results. How fast did it get indexed? Which ones got indexed? Which ones didn't? Was it rendered indexing? Was it simple indexing? Did it work? What's going on? And so she has this data over time on Google's performance and efficiency of indexing, and she regularly reports on it. Now, if you can imagine how much work goes into that, it's a massive personal investment. So I'm not surprised that she's having people subscribe to the data. But I bet the cost that she's asking is way below what it's going to cost you to do yourself. So what's the price on that, Carolyn?
It's $18 a month. And if people subscribe for a whole year, they save a little money, get a couple of months free, and they actually have access to view the data log. So if they want to go back and look at something, they can.
So the cost that it would cost you, the viewer, to set up one test page and get it indexed and track it, that amount of time that you'd be putting into basically covers the whole month of her service. So you get a month out of what she's, what it would cost you to replicate it for a day. So that's 30 to 1 in your favor. Price is reasonable. So, if you want, what's that?
I said, what do you think, Lee?
What do you think?
Oh, I know it does. I know what it takes to put that stuff up. This was a no-brainer. I ain't doing that. Well, the other thing is Carolyn doesn't just put up, her test pages. Sometimes within that, she'll also launch other tests to try different indexation or different styles or different this. So it's not just, she's throwing up a couple of pages a day and recording that stuff. She's got a whole bunch of different things. And she will call when there's going to be an update, when there's rollbacks, when you're going to struggle because the bots are down and they're just not taking stuff in, which methods currently are not working efficiently. So if you're using any of that stuff to get your stuff crawled and indexed, it's good to know. it's not my site, it's Google, or it is me.
Yeah. And I used to do this type of monitoring myself, but I did it half-ass. I would do it, a few days a month. And so when Carolyn picked up this torch and ran with it, is like awesome. Now we get the full data because I don't have to do it my, half-ass Ted got busy kind of way. And so yeah, even someone at my level can't do everything. And so if you're sitting there going, I'm gonna do it all myself, well, good luck with that.
Yeah.
It's not reasonable. It takes a community, and some of these things have costs. And so this one is a no-brainer to me. You should check it out.
If I can jump in just real quick. So even from an enterprise level, one of the things I learned from Carolyn is, so there's a lot of tools out there, a lot of enterprise tools, and they'll say, Google hit your site. That's not good enough, I've learned. That's nowhere near good enough. You need to understand what version of, first of all, was it mobile or desktop? Which user string was it? And there's a level of understanding I have now that changes the game completely. You need to understand that it is important. And I would never have figured it out on my own. I would have been still looking at the standard reports. Google's hitting us, Google's not hitting us. Oh, well, I guess we're fine. Nope. Not true. Not true. You can't make that assumption.
So yeah, you can guess, you can do a half-assed attempt at it, or you can look at somebody's work who's been doing it on the regular and hasn't wavered for 2 years.
Yeah,
So
just buy the answer. Just buy the answer.
buy the answer. And Carolyn, correct me if I'm wrong. You don't care if people hop in, hop out as needed, right? Like that's okay if they sign up for a month this month and then come back 3 months later. It's all okay.
I guess I'll cross that bridge if I come to it. But it's, it might be something. I just wonder, how other people also would feel about that are consistent and hanging in there. So, if somebody has a question and they just need it answered one time, if they did it once, that's fine. But I think if it became a habit, I'd probably say, maybe you should sign up for the whole year.
Okay.
And
So
not force yourself to decide this on a month-to-month basis.
All right, let me rephrase the question. What if people wanted to sign up for a month to see if it's the good fit for them? Is that okay?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
there you go. Try it out, see if it's right for you. And be sure to
I
check.
regularly ask for feedback in there as well, like, method of delivering. So I'm playing around with, video with a little bit of a, transcription or screenshots or types of things. So and especially just trying to be responsive to when things immediately change. It's wonderful to be able to immediately just kind of get all the information out to everybody at one time.
Excellent. And I'm thinking we'll just skip the topic conversation and jump to questions because we have a decent list here. How do you guys feel about that?
Sounds like a good idea.
All right. All right. Number one. I rank number one for 24-hour electrician. So 24-hour electrician, I'm thinking you rank in local SEO, so map search. With the city page, but if I just search 24-hour electrician, the 24-hour electrician page shows up at 24. How do I make that move up for people searching just service? All right, so you get number one for 24-hour electrician city, and you get number 24 for 24-hour electrician localized. So you're localizing by IP address. These are actually two different searches. All right, they're different keyword searches, they have different scoring. The reason being, the primary difference is the exact match portion. So the exact match in one query is 24-hour electrician city, and the exact match in the other one is 24-hour electrician. Those are different strings that will occur at different rates on your page and thus end up with different ranking scores. An exact match is really important right now. So, yeah. All right, next. Um, so with this targeting, this is a question that is, do I include the city in the search term, or do I just use the service keyword and localize with the UULE parameter, the near city parameter, or with IP geolocation? And when you are playing that game, you are actually targeting younger versus older audiences, strange as that sounds. And so the reason you are targeting by age with that choice is anyone that predates geolocation services has been trained to add the city. So before Google could know our IP location, we had to type in Seattle plumber. Anyone who was born after that and raised with geolocation technologies knows they can type in plumber and Google will figure out where it needs to be. And so you tend to trend older in the keyword plus city searches, and you tend to trend younger in the geolocated keywords. And so you oftentimes want to look at it both ways, because if you're trying to do loan refinancing, you probably want to trend older. So you can think about your targeting in those ways, but they're technically different queries and they both need to be optimized on their own merit. What do you think, Lee?
If you're ranking 24 for a 24-hour electrician, that means you're passing through the local filtering, but you end up actually competing against national companies when you just target that, because only the first couple 3 pages tends to be the local results, and then you'll find, if I'm here in Oklahoma City, I'll see 24-hour electrician Miami, Florida, 24-hour electrician Chicago, Illinois. And you start to get these other things where people have really optimized the crap out of their pages for a root term, but they're ranking well outside of their geography for it. The solution to that tends to be one of 2 things: increase your keyword density on the page for 24-hour electrician or its variations, or get you a few more links with that keyword and or variations.
Yeah, and in some of these spaces where there's a lot of lead gen models, they are tuned to the nines on those lead gen sites. So these are businesses that aren't in these areas, but they're farming leads. And those people, their SEO is dialed in super aggressively. So I hate to say it, if you're up against those types of lead gen sites, you're going to have a very aggressive SEO game. There's just no way around it. What do you think, Charles? Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I saw that question out there, and I don't think I'm really saying anything new that you guys haven't said, but if you've got 24-hour electrician New York City, why would you expect that to rank for just 24-hour electrician in Montana or Dallas or Las Vegas? Like, that's like, you're already telling Google, I'm a 24-hour electrician in New York City. Why should Google rank that other places? So I think there's, it just goes down to the basic optimization of the page. Like, I would imagine that depending on the business, you would want your homepage to rank for 24-hour electrician, and then you're going to have, you're going to break down based on locations. Let's say maybe you're a nationwide company. These aren't electricians, but like Roto-Rooter. That's a nationwide plumber. They rank specific pages for the area. If you were in Providence, Rhode Island, you don't want to find the national page. You want to find the Providence, Rhode Island page. If you're just searching for plumber in general, that's when we'd want Roto-Rooter to show up. So that's kind of my strategic way of looking at it.
All right. So next question. Any data on the helpful content update Clint mentioned on his stream it could have something to do with internal links or poor internal linking, to be precise. Any tests or data on that? I do not have tests or data on that, but I will say this, Clint's educated guesses are often better than most.
Mhm.
So if Clint is saying this, it's probably based on something. And if you haven't seen Clint's stream, it's SEO This Week on YouTube. Highly recommend it. Amazing stream. Um, but in terms of updates, like if you've been hit in a positive way, if you've been hit in a negative way, we still view the general underlying, force at work there is you have gaps in your SEO. So, for example, if an update is going to make exact matches weaker and backlinks stronger, going sharply up or sharply down in those really depends on which one you have and which one you don't. So, if you go up or down, it implies you have gaps in your SEO. So, even if you moved up this time, you've got a problem because what can happen next time? You can go back down, especially if they roll back because you have a gap in your SEO. So if you can measure all your deficits and eliminate them, in general, you just coast through on these things. Now, some of these updates target very specific niches and very specific ways, and those very specific details are secret. So we often don't know what's in the helpful content update that might specifically be impacting your site in your industry. So we don't know all things. Um, but yeah, I don't have data on this. What do you think, Lee? Any thoughts on what it might be?
Yeah, I think that, well, here's the thing. This is such a vague thing. We don't know. I've seen no data from anybody anywhere that can define what helpful content is or isn't backed by some data. So even Clint, which is, and I love Clint's stuff. You have to take a look at it. But even Clint, the way he mentioned it is, it might have something, or a component of it might be internal linking. The might be is like, we're fishing around and saying, could this be what it's about? Could that? We don't have a definition of what it is. We have nothing to measure, and nobody has any data. So right now, you're in very much a hypothesis stage, about stuff, and we're finding data. You find, like, we had observed some things, a group that I was with recently, we've observed some things that happened in the last update, and we're like, now I don't think those things are helpful content, but if you'd been hit by some of those things, it might feel like, oh, I got hit in the helpful content update. So as we don't know what it is, I have no idea about whether somebody was hit nor how to remedy it.
Yeah, and I have theories on the helpful content update, but my theories don't jive with how most of our industry is talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm kind of reluctant to share them and say I think this is helpful content update because it doesn't agree with what most of the industry is saying, and B, I don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just theories. It's a hypothesis. On my side, when they came out with helpful content update around that same time on the calendar, we started seeing this feature in search results where Google was parsing out, pros and cons lists and side effects and common problems and information like this. And it was highlighting that parsed information in the search results. And I was like, wow, that content's really helpful. I wonder if that new feature that just popped in is part of the helpful content update. But that definition won't jive with most SEO communities.
Mm-hmm.
So, my advice on helpful content update, which is probably the wrong advice, but it's just based on my own observations, is put some helpful content on the page. And in theory, a helpful content update should be able to find that. And what I would do is I would look at example queries. So find queries like benefits of protein powder, and go see what Google's parsing and displaying in the search results, and see if you can mimic those implementations they're working with to get that type of capability. And so that would be my best guess at what this might even be, but I don't know for sure.
Even with that, there are, I mean, you've given an avenue for people to diagnose their stuff, because if my page that's about benefits of protein powder dropped and I go look at the SERP and all of my competitors, you know, or a good chunk of them have like pros and cons listed under theirs, maybe that's something I can do to my page. But if you don't see any of those new like helpful features that you're describing, because they're not in all searches and they tend to come and go, so you know, maybe that's not helpful content. Maybe it's just a test of a presentation system. So again, we don't know, but it gives you an idea. You know, you can go look and see, is there something that's being highlighted in my competitors' pages in the SERP that I don't have?
Yeah, but is my definition of helpful content the same as Clint's, the same as Signals Lab? Probably not.
Yeah.
And are my observations the same as Clint's observations? Probably not. And so it's all over the place. All right.
I just have to say this to you guys, that I actually have what I believe is data on what it may be doing. And so I think the conversation around it is very myopic in general. And I think that it's, again, I am going to be presenting some of this next month. If all fingers crossed, just turned in some an article that's basically showing that data and parsing it down and trying to, again, I don't think anybody right now can say, this is it and this is how they do it, but the evidence is out there. And so it's just attempting to like pull in all these little things in testing, and then having access to a lot of working sites and seeing what are they doing. And when you eliminate a lot of optimization issues and those types of things, and you still see things developing, it does lend to give you clues. And so I think that, we're all focused on the term helpful, but I think it is word salad, to be honest.
Well, I love the fact, like I said earlier, we're all kind of guessing at it. So anybody that's got data, that can lend some clarity and, sort of defined lines around helpful content, because there aren't any right now. That's awesome. So I'm looking forward to it. And
I look forward to you giving me feedback when you see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like a test, right? That's how I'm presenting it. Like, yep. If it's necessary, and having it peer reviewed and people,
Yeah, what people often forget is if there isn't peer review, then it's technically not science.
Right.
All right. Let's see. Have you thought about adding n-gram measurements and scroll depth to first image data to Cora? There are some n-gram stuff in Cora 7.5 in the beta, and a lot of the n-gram stuff is already built into entity features and LSI features. So there's some of that in there. There will certainly be more. Roman Barnes, who's a Google patent diver, He's found a number of mentions about ngram usage within the algorithm patents, and it's really interesting and compelling, and it kind of matches up with a lot of things we see in search. So it is kind of an important area to not lose sight of. So yeah, I would expect as a function of time for there to be additional focus in that area. In what areas on a page is it most beneficial to use exact match? Well, since the early days, since we've been measuring going back about 9-10 years for SEO testing, even my earliest tests, like out on Black Hat World, showed data that there seems to be a super factor that when the URL mentions a keyword, the title tag mentions a keyword, the H1 mentions the keyword, and your content, sentences mentions the keyword, it tends to be a super factor where the net effect of that super factor is greater than the sum of its individual parts. So it has a gestalt effect. And so that would be the minimum thing I would want you to do, is to get that agreement between those hot zones of the page and any other zones you can think of, because other zones also add power, but it seemed like those four had a very strong footprint, an abnormally strong footprint in Google. So I would at a minimum do those four, and then I would look for more parts of the page to use it in. And another thing to consider is, if you think about what I did there, it's actually factor diversity, and those were just kind of the four hot zones that you need diversity in. Continuing more signal diversity, it's a good idea in the footer, in the nav, in your section tags, in your supplemental content, in your top nav, and your, just factors everywhere. What do you think, Lee?
You know, I think for me, when I hear, question anything about exact match, a lot of the subtext of the questions, people are afraid to add the exact match too much for fear of, penalty. My advice in doing it is, yes, put it in as many zones as you can, but also look, like at a core report, you can see how many times people on page one are utilizing exact match in various parts of the page. Because sometimes, people say, I've got it on there like 6 times, and all of your competitors have it 1 to 500 times in their HTML in various zones. You're not going to win. If that's the case, you've got to close that gap. So just let the data guide you. Take a look at what they're doing, on page one. Like Ted always says, if they can do it, why can't I?
And exact match is a weird beast. Like, you'll see it come into play and out of play almost randomly. And the reason that happens is because there are search terms where the exact match is too awkward to use on page. So if your keyword is DUI lawyer Los Angeles, it's not like you're going to write on the page, Clint Butler is the best DUI lawyer Los Angeles you're ever going to meet. It's like, it's too awkward to use it. And so in those cases, everybody just psychologically doesn't use it, but it's still being scored in the algorithm. So if you can find a way to use it, you get that factor all to yourself because nobody else is competing on it. So I would find a way, even if it's awkward. All right. Let's see. How does user interactions affect ranking? So this is largely CTR type manipulation. What we're generally seeing is searching for a term, clicking on a result, and satisfying the need to not continue searching that term anymore is kind of what Google's trying to get at. And so if Google's picking up signals that websites aren't meeting the need of the search, then they want to try different things, try new things. And it's not necessarily damning to one site at a time. It can be, but it can also potentially be damning to entire result sets. For example, searching things and never clicking might hurt all of page one. We don't know. And so, keep in mind that it might not necessarily be a help hurt, my site alone thing. This type of manipulation could have collateral damage. So, in general, I don't do a lot of CTR. I know it works, and there's a lot of data out there showing that it works. It seems to have temporary effects. So, when you're trending, you're up. But what happens when you stop trending? Think about it before you do it. And the other thing is the main thing people get wrong with CTR is they throw thousands and thousands of hits, and that's usually a very, very bad idea. So if you don't know what you're doing and you don't know how to test, you ought to stay out. So that's my advice there. And oftentimes I find that most of the time for normal SEO, not local behaves different than normal SEO. For normal SEO, it's usually unnecessary. So you don't even need to go there. What do you think, Lee?
I'm going to throw this in the same bucket as helpful content, in the sense that there's a lot of theories and there's a lot of practices out there, and there's very little data that's clean that shows, the mechanisms by which it works or doesn't work, depending on who you talk to. So you'll hear like, oh, Google uses this data in the following ways. I'm like, show me data. Google uses, these sort of click data this way. Show me data. Google looks at these particular elements, a bounce, or, how many pages you visit, or total, watch time. Show me data, and show me data that is compelling, not just anecdotal data from your website. Or a lot of times, especially when people are using CTR, I do CTR. Or what'd you do? I did CTR. Did you do anything else? Well, yeah, I optimized the page. I built some links. I did this other thing and this other thing too. And I'm like, well, how do you know it was the CTR and not the links, or not the on page, or not the other thing? Well, it works. So it's the CTR or the links or the whatever. So there's not a lot of data. So when you have people that are claiming anything related to user experience, user data, and they refer to a person or a document, run. That's not good enough to modify your business practices.
What would you say to people who are interested in the topic but want to run tests?
I would say test away, because when you find the stuff that works, when you do it yourself, like Carolyn's been testing, all of this indexation stuff for, over 2 years now, and she has learned an enormous amount of stuff, not only about indexation, but about bot behaviors and ancillary things related to that. Once you start to get into it, you'll find that this one thing will affect other areas of your SEO. And I don't care whether you're testing CTR or links or on page or anything. It has a ripple effect across all of your SEO. And then you'll know for certain because you've got data.
All right. Is there a good public replacement tool for Google's mobile friendliness tool? Well, I never thought their tool was all that great to begin with. It often claimed I had problems I didn't have and failed to pick up problems I did have. I'm kind of glad it's retiring because it wasn't really a solution. So, I think the thing you really want is just good website testing. So, just testing your stuff is going to find most of the issues you need. Um, you know, yeah, there's probably a few mobile friendliness tools out there. I think they were saying that they're retiring it because it's moving into Lighthouse and Chrome, and so I would explore those. But yeah, in general, just, really test your stuff. Like, people don't want to test anymore, and it shows. So just, test more and check out Lighthouse in Chrome.
Yeah, officially Google's pushing people to Lighthouse. Anecdotally, for the mobile test, we had a site that was not in the mobile index, and the mobile friendliness test said our site was perfect. So I think that kind of says the value of that. If you were relying on that tool, you shouldn't have been, because it was not accurate.
Let's see, how does Cloudflare affect ranking? Um, well, the most common way Cloudflare is going to derail your SEO is that if the bot detection is on, your rank trackers and SEO tools are not going to get the correct information to tell you what you need to do. And so if you're not aware that Cloudflare can disrupt your SEO tools, you could be making decisions on very inaccurate data. So the first thing to understand is, really understand what Cloudflare is, what it's doing, and its bot countermeasure feature set. You really want to understand those things. Another way that Cloudflare is affecting people in the future is they're often configured to block bots they don't recognize. And that would include Common Crawl, which would keep your website's content out of large language models. So if you weren't included in all these past rounds of large language models and you wanted your website to be in there, you need to go back to Cloudflare and stop blocking Common Crawl. So yeah, there's probably 100 different ways you can shoot yourself in the foot with the tool set like Cloudflare. So you really need to know it well to make sure you're not causing problems. And again, you got to test and verify. What do you think, Lee?
I think the easiest way, I agree with all of that. The easiest way is just, go into Search Console, do a live test on the page, and make sure that, Google can read it. When you look at the page visually, it displays your page and not a Cloudflare connection problem. And, check the source code a little bit to make sure it's the complete source code, and then you're fine. You should be able to find your problems there.
But keep in mind, Cloudflare might let the Google IP through and might not let your SEO software through. So it can be situational. So
Well, I think I was responding basically to the premise is how can it affect rankings? Not can it how can it affect things that are trying to track your rankings and may be impacted by it. For me, the stuff that affects rankings is if somehow it interferes with Google's interpretation of your page. So you can see that in Search Console.
Yep. All right. A few shows back, you mentioned something about getting your sub pages to rank as if they were your home page. What's the trick there? No comment. All right, I said I'm an open book. That's an all pages are home pages thing, and that is the answer, and you have to conduct your own research on that. Do the thought experiment of what SEO would be like if that were the case. There you go. I said something I shouldn't have. All right. Why can I find 404 in Search Console, but I can't find them in Big Webmaster Tools and Ahref Site Off Audit Tool, and not even using Screaming Frog? Well, I can't speak to why different tools pick up or don't pick up different things. But 404s are, they're kind of important, because if you had a page that now went away, that page might have had backlinks, and a 404 can represent orphan backlinks. A 404 could represent a typo in your CMS. You know, a 404 could be a computer error in your URL router for PHP. So there's a lot of technical reasons why you could have 404s even intermittently. And so, you know, the nature of the problem to me suggests that there's an underlying technical SEO issue. And if some tools see it and some tools don't, then that might be a clue as to the nature of the technical issue. But really, you'd have to look really closely at the web development of it and at the errors specifically and the URLs specifically to try to get those clues. And this is another place where web logs might give you the detail you need, because if you see enough examples of the 404s, you might see a pattern. So taking Carolyn up on her weblog analysis might reveal a clue that matters.
Yeah, I've played around with some of those different tools, and there are a couple of things to keep in mind. They don't all crawl the same way or to the same depth of the same pages, so you might be comparing apples and oranges. And they also look at different time periods. So, for example, in Search Console, we all know that it's buggy at times and it'll report. So you might have had a 404 page, and then if you go in and fix it, it can still appear there because it doesn't clear out its, history or presentation or whatever. So it can show you the wrong stuff. But if in Search Console you have a 404 page that's showing up, grab the URL and do a live test on it and see if it is a 404. Let Google, right now tell you whether that's still a problem or not.
Charles, you probably have an opinion or two on 404s.
I have an entire deck on Google presenting errors that may not be there. So I literally do. That's in our topic list. I have actually two examples of a couple of examples where Google says there's an error. I look in Google's reports. It says there's a specific error. I check the page. It looks fine. I check the log files. Never got an error. Never showed anything. I then check. I run a validation, and Google's like, "Yep, everything's fine." I've also seen that Google's reports are I don't want to say simplistic, but it's not a replacement for diagnostic tools. Google will check a page to say, oh, this page has an error. We fixed the error, but what we didn't know is there was another error. Well, Google said that the original error was still there in their report. So what the report was obviously doing is checking for an error, not checking for a specific error. And there's definitely some lag on these reports. I would imagine that there's probably a lot more lag than we realize because the error might have happened 2 weeks ago. It hasn't happened last week, and that's why I can't replicate the error. So, yeah,
and you see some of that. Carolyn's really, really good about seeing because she reports on some of this stuff in her research. Your Search Console can say this page is crawled and currently not indexed, and you can go search, for the keyword and find the damn page. So, again, you have to validate the data that's given to you because it can be problematic.
I'll give you one tip: check mobile and desktop. Don't just check your desktop version. Check your mobile version. Weird things happen sometimes. Check incognito. Check a couple different ways. Don't just open it up once on your desktop and say, yep, no problem, I'm moving on. Charles says Google lies sometimes. That's not what I'm saying. They do, but
So Coinshaw says, for clarity, n-gram measurement would be a count of 2 grams, 3 grams, etc. And yeah, when you get into counting matches, you're at a whole new theoretical SEO game, because even most tools, in my opinion, don't know how to count. So for example, if you have a keyword like used cars, the bolded variations in search will be used cars and used cars. And so when you go to count those bolded variations and the keyword usage on the page, most tools are going to scan through, and every occurrence of used cars, it's going to find used, there's one, and cars, there's two, and used cars, there's 3 matches for every occurrence of used cars on a page. So when you're counting variations, it's inflating the match counts. And so the proper way for SEO tools to count is to sort the words you're counting by length and to count the largest ones first, then remove them from the text before counting the shorter ones. And then you get the practical count, which is actually how much work you need to do. And so with a lot of SEO tools, you'll see that the numbers don't agree on what you need to do because the tools don't know how to count. And so you really got to kind of understand your tool set and what they do. So run a test keyword on used cars and see how it counts on a page and see if you're doing the work in a way that's consistent with how it's being measured. Lee, what do you think about word counting?
Yeah, I mean it's a challenging thing, and when you get to n-grams and you start to look at a document, if you've got 500 words, and that's a limited amount of content, that's 501 grams to start off with, and then it's 499 2 grams because you start with every pair word pair going across there, and then the number of 3 grams, and then you have to determine the frequency, and sometimes when you throw out something because it only appears once, you might be throwing out the phrase, ran quickly to, as a phrase, or you might be throwing out, buy used cars because it only appeared once on the page. So determining which n-grams, which variations, when you do that, is very, very complicated. And also just determining which words form the pool. This is one of the things I've learned from watching the development of Quora over time and, kind of comparing numbers and things like that. Does it have to appear on the page? Which tags are you counting? Which tags are you not counting? Some places will use, for example, just p tags around paragraph. You can identify that's text, but some things don't use p tags around paragraph. So it's just free floating there. So should it be counted? Should it not be counted? It's really, really tricky just to determine what the words are. And then it's also tricky to determine, which 1, 2, and 3 grams you should be paying attention to. Otherwise, you end up with, all right, here's the 48,000, 1, 2, and 3 grams for your SEO pleasure. Good luck.
Yeah, and I know in LSI, we tend to not want n-grams to start or end with a stop word, and the stop words will be all the articles and pronouns and things that you wouldn't normally start a keyword with. And so in that sense, Lee's right. If you include those that start with a weird word in the middle, then you blow up your keyword list to 50,000, 100,000 words. You start making sensible cuts on things, and it's still going to be, 4,000 words and pretty noisy data. And that's why people like entities. And here's the fighting words for people out there. Entities and LSI keywords are the exact same thing. So there's the fight. People are going to blow it up. They're the exact same thing because they both measure words that co-occur on pages that rank well. They have the same empirical unit of measure. The difference is one comes out of NLP, one is acquired statistically. They are acquired through very different means, but they are used exactly the same way. So the reason they're used exactly the same way is we think of Lee's popular example for apple pie. What are the words that come up conversationally around apple pie? You think about that example, think about it in terms of your keyword, and you're like temperature, oven, oven mitts, pie pans, crust, cinnamon, sugar, etc. Those are the words that conversationally come up around a topic. And it is in this way that Google is quantifying that page A is more about apple pie than page B. All right. And that's a good game to play. But then you have to also keep in mind that the negative is true. So if you go off topic on entities, you're going to hurt yourself. So you can't use all entities. You have to use your brain. And with LSI, thank goodness there's LSI. Because here's the thing, all the LSI haters never answer. Entities are only available in a dozen or so languages. So what happens when your client's in Vietnam? Oh, I don't have an answer for that. LSI is a scam. No, it's thank goodness we have LSI keywords because they're exactly the same thing. You use them exactly the same way, and they largely get you to the same answer. Now, there will be some on one list, not on the other list, and that's why we use both, because when you get the full list, it's a better outcome. But they do the same thing. What do you think, Lee? Am I smoking crack on this one?
Not on this one, but yeah, I think it's really hard problem, and people think that all you got to do is pull out the n-grams, pull out the entities, pull out the LSI, and just the ones that we want are just the ones that are the correct ones. They don't understand that the basis of the problem is an extraordinarily difficult one. This is where I can go off on a rant on all of the entity and LSI tools out there claiming that they have the best because of X, Y, and Z. Because ultimately, we can't see inside of Google's knowledge graph, so nobody can confirm whether or not their stuff represents Google's, and it all contains noisy data, every single one of them. So it's not an easy, it's not an easy thing to do. If you look at the LSI list in Quora, most of the time for the stuff that I do, it runs about, 1,500 rows of data, and a good chunk of those are not relevant. But it's just, when you start to expand it out and try to include to get a complete list, you're going to get more noise. And when you narrow it down, you're going to miss some stuff. So there's really no way to satisfy that cleanly.
All right. We need to go into the speed round of question answering. All right. So speed round answers only. I have a website optimizing 300 cities for a keyword, Carpenter City. How can I interlink them to boost ranking? I think if you think about it in terms of e-com, you're upselling widgets. So, probably is going to be good. So related, trending, popular, bestsellers, new. Those types of widgets are great cross-linking in your main nav. Lee.
Go search for locksmith or garage door repair in any of the top 10 cities in the US. I would tend to stay away from Los Angeles and New York because they're weird ecosystems, and just look at the structure of those sites and you'll learn everything you need to know about that question.
All right. Any thoughts, Charles?
Ditto what Lee said.
Okay. Are internal link titles a rank factor? Yes, they are. So anchor text always matters, and it needs to be relevant to what it's linking to. Lee.
Yes.
Charles?
Yes, with the provision as if he's referring to the actual title tag of the page linking from A to B, that helps and is important as well. Has to be a relevant link.
Is there conclusive or somewhat conclusive evidence or data that HTML sitemaps help with crawling or indexing? Yes, you can observe them being crawled. And sometimes they rank, so sometimes the index even ranks. I think a lot of indexing tools are based on the premise of links on a page, so sitemap-like behavior, but on pages that are refreshed and revisited often. So it's kind of the underlying force on how certain classes of indexers work. So yeah, I'd say that's somewhat conclusive evidence. See, with larger sites, how many links is too much in an HTML sitemap? the online retailer I worked for often had between 500 and 1,000 links in the main navigation. So all the top level and subcategories across a large online retailer. So I would say out to those dimensions, you're still probably pretty safe. So we probably didn't come close to a limit. What do you think, Lee?
I think there's some documentation both from Google and Bing that they have recommendations, and I can't remember the number. It was like don't go above say 5,000 links in any one sitemap, one XML sitemap. So I would tend to just look at the documentation and see what they're saying because that stuff changes over time.
But keep in mind, an HTML sitemap is just a web page, so not the XML limitation.
Yeah. So Charles, Enterprise, you have a few pages.
If there's a limit, I have yet to hit it.
Nice.
Okay.
So I think the limit would be limit size of an HTML page. That would be the limit that Google just says, nope, I'm not reading anymore after 5 megabytes or whatever they have their limit at.
And from our testing, that limit was actually at around 3 megabytes of words. So, Google claimed 10, but we were only able to see 3 in the data. So at least put your most important pages in the top 3 megabytes of a page. All right. That one we answered. What do you think about news sites that are populated with spun content posts? I think it works now. It can't work forever because it's running off the rails currently. So AI content is the new meta keywords tag, and it will need to be handled at some point. But right now, kid in a candy store. What do you think, Lee?
I think you have to look at two things. A lot of times, if you have a crappy page and you spin it, now you've got a crappy spun page. So people think because it's news, but and there's some magic there. A lot of times, and I hate to say this, like Fox News, where Charles works, they got a few backlinks. So whatever they put out is going to be powered up by just the massive authority of the site. So spinning one of those pages is not necessarily, I don't know how well SEO'd any of the specific page are, isn't going to get you, a great result. So if you have good, well optimized content to start, you can spin it and get spun decently optimized content. If you've got crap and you spin it, you've got spun crap.
When you have a site that has lost 20% of its traffic over 4 months at a steady rate, what is this usually indicative of? Started before the updates and wasn't affected by them. So when it's an algorithm change, typically it's sharp, fast down. When it's link decay, it's usually quick, small jumps down. So you'll go from number 1 to number 8, then you'll go number 8, number 12. And that's kind of indicative of link decay, losing those press releases. When it is a slow, steady, never rebounds loss, then I start thinking technical SEO issue.
Mm-hmm.
So infinite crawls by Google, or you're serving up error responses to Googlebot, some negative SEO attacks, some things running off the rails in a technical way when it's a slow, steady decline. So that's not hit by an algorithm. That's we did something. And oftentimes, if you can pinpoint when it started the slow decline and you can look at the activity around that date, was there a web application deployment from the developers? Is this when we did our website redesign? Is this, when we started, using various things like the disavow tool? Is this when,
You add a
look
plugin.
around the date?
Yeah, you can add a plugin and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, plug in. So look around the date. There's probably something that happened on or around that date that is the technical SEO issue. Technical SEO audit, looking for those things is a good idea too. So you might find your somebody who's familiar with your web development. You don't get a technical audit from anyone. You get a technical audit from somebody who understands your architecture very, very well and who understands SEO very, very well. Both of those need to be true for it to be a good technical audit. Um, all right, so let's see.
So I think Charles has to bounce here in a minute. He has an appointment.
Yeah. So it's the free to bounce moment. I'm gonna stay and try to answer a few more. Um, let's see. Major traffic decrease, what to do even after good and genuine quality content. Well, you need data. So this thing where SEOs say if you write quality content, good things will happen. It's not true. If Google's advice for SEO was correct, SEOs wouldn't be needed, right? You'd be ranking #1 right now. And so it would have worked by now if it was going to work. So what you actually need is to get skeptical about SEO experts. You need to start proving things for yourself, and to do that, you need measurements. So go get some data, or get some help from somebody that's used to working with data, and understand how you're actually different than your higher ranking competitors, because when you see those differences, you're probably going to be shocked and offended, but it's a reality you've been neglecting. What do you think, Lee?
I agree 100%. There's more fear about Google's rules than there needs to be. And it's not that it's just black hat. You're just looking at solid SEO by Amazon, Walmart, Yelp, all of these sites violate the commonly held Google's rules, as well as, I used to look at things like the old rule, don't have your keyword density above 2%. And you see on most keywords, you can't get onto page one with anything less than 2%. And generally it's, 4 to 5%, keyword density and higher. So, and we have these rules about certain anchor text or certain backlinks, or certain this or certain that. And you just look at who's ranking, and we're not talking about black hat pages. We're talking about, very large, well-known, well-respected, the model enterprises that, break these rules. But we have these things in our head, and they cause us to, not rank as well as we could rank, just because we're holding ourselves back. So get some data, get a core report, look, keyword by keyword, page by page, and, see what it is. And you'll start to find, hey, maybe I don't have, this factor. Maybe my internal linking sucks, or maybe I don't have enough external links coming to the site or to the pages that I'm trying to optimize for. It is what it is. Let the data guide you.
When you guys test, are you letting them be found through the sitemap or submitting them individually? Has there been any effect with tests by force indexing, requesting them rather than naturally? Yeah, I would always request indexing on my tests, because I want them to get processed, and waiting for Google to organically discover things, it's just not tenable. I mean, can you test that way? Sure, but you're gonna do 3 tests a year that way.
Yeah.
And so if you need to do a lot of testing, then you kind of need to force the matter.
Yeah,
What
and
do you think?
it also sounded like there was an element in there. Has anybody tested indexation methods? And I would say yes, constantly for the last 2 years. Carolyn, go to crawl or no crawl.
Yep. How to search backlinks on a daily basis in Google or Bing or Internet Explorer. It's a tough job for me to manually search. I mean, there are tools out there that report on backlinks, Ahrefs, SEMrush, Majestic, Moz, and there are other tools too. Um,
Why,
so
yeah, the question, why are they searching daily for those?
yeah, it's kind of silly to search daily for backlinks, but occasionally if you use the link operator, you can find a sample of them in Google. So if you're trying to find out diagnostically, a sample that Google's working with, uh, and similarly, searching for exact matches on pages to your website can find a different sample of pages that are linking to. So you can kind of double up on your samples out of Google's system. So that's one way of doing it, especially when you don't own the site. So sometimes you don't have a configuration for it in Search Console. So those tools are helpful then. Um, and then, of course, you can also look at the Search Console data, which is also sampled. I see people treat it like it's the grand total of all truth, and it is not. You got to know that that's a random sample, and most of your data isn't represented there.
Yeah, another fast little operator you can do for your website is, mywebsite.com minus site colon mywebsite.com. So that'll give, all the things that have your domain in it that are not your, from your domain, not your pages. And that works on both Google and Bing. Again, it's a sample though.
All right. Let's see. Bill. And that's all, I think. Oops, I had it on top chat. Let me switch to live, double check. I might have missed a question or two because I had the wrong chat setting on there. If I missed your question, just bring it back next week and ask it early. And thanks a lot, everyone. We'll see you next time.